Today I'm going to talk about another feminist myth, and this is the glass ceiling myth. Now, if you notice, women are always talking about how women are not allowed into the upper echelons of, the corporate boardrooms. They're not allowed into the top tiers of the political spectrum and what have you. It's as if men are, sitting around and saying, we'll let them read and write, we'll put shoes on them, and we'll even let them vote, but we're not going to give them the top prize. No, the top prize will stay just for us boys, and girls are not going to get any of the good stuff, the top tier stuff. We're going to just, keep our boot on their shoulders, just keep them down. Yeah, that's what we talk about when we meet up at the patriarchy meetings every week. The reason that this is a myth, that there is a glass ceiling that doesn't somehow allow women to get to the very top of different professions, is because there are very few women at the very top. And yet, when you look at the averages of people, of human beings, it seems as if women and men are very similar on average. On average, that's the key issue. See, first of all, on average, men tend to be slightly smarter than women. This is just a fact of life across all spectrum, including reading and writing skills. Men outperform women on average by a little bit. And there's been a lot of talk that this must be, culturally biased or nonsense like that, but this difference, this slight difference, slight superiority on average, it's minor enough that we can just discard it and ignore it. What's more true is something very interesting that was pointed out by a woman named Helena Cronin at the London School of Economics. Now, Helena Cronin is a very serious academic, very reputable academic, who has written a lot of different books, both academic and for the mainstream. And she came up with a very simple explanation, or not even came up with it. She pointed out an obvious truth that is obvious from the time of Darwin. Darwin himself was the one who first pointed out that there is more variance among males than among females. Now, what does this mean, there's more variance? There's more variation. That is, there are more men who are very, very tall and more men who are very, very short compared to women. Women tend to cluster around the average in whatever category you care to name. Let's take something non-controversial, height. There are relatively few female dwarves compared to male dwarves. There are relatively few females suffering from giganticism as compared to men who are suffering from giganticism. Yeah? Most women tend to cluster closer to the mean, to the average. Now, how can we represent this? How we would represent this, and in point of fact, let me find a pen here. In point of fact, it was Helena Cronin who pointed this out. Now, if you look at any particular quality, quality Q, and compare it to the number N, right? Now let me just do different colors for men and women. Let's put red for women. If this is quality Q and this is the number N, women's curve, the famous bell curve, tends to be more like this, where this, wait, let me just do this. Oops, sorry. Where this is the average. Yeah, they tend to cluster more. There are fewer standard deviations from the average among women. That is, just to recall, red equals women. And just to make it nice and tidy, green, oops, now you see it, green equals men. Now, men's curve, and this is what's interesting, men's curve tends to be flatter. The average is close to women's. Actually, it's slightly superior to women's, but we'll leave that. But what happens is that there are greater tails. Okay, I'm not drawing this curve correctly because this average number should be closer to the females, but we'll leave it at that for now, for the time being. The point is, you see, on the tail ends, men excel in whatever it happens to be. You see, if this is, for instance, this figure here is 5, here for men, it will tend to be 20 or more. So if you look at the extremes in any particular case, say in this slice here, of whatever quantity we might be looking at, IQ, height, weight, whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever quality we can quantify, excuse me, you will note, as Helena Cronin pointed out, because do keep in mind, this is something that Helena Cronin pointed out, and I find it extremely interesting, and that's why I'm passing it on, because it's the obvious explanation. It's Darwinian. The explanation comes from Darwin, from evolution. You see, men and women, on average, are similar, but when you get to the extremes, when you get to the tail end of the bell curve, that's when things get a little different. And so, as a society, we keep looking at the average. Men's and women's average intelligence is 100. The IQ test, by definition, 100 is the average, or roughly around 100. So most men and most women have a similar average intelligence. So how come there are so few women in the boardroom? How come there are so few women who excel in math? How come there are so few women who get Nobel Prizes? It must be sexism, right? Well, no. As Helena Cronin points out, the top 1% insofar as mathematical ability is overrepresented by men by something like 13 to 1. I'll have a link in the description below to a very interesting and very simple paper, a simple response that Helena Cronin wrote up. You can explore her work. It's all online. It's easily accessible. And she is, first of all, the great thing about it is that she's a woman. So nobody is saying that she's being sexist, you know. She's just simply pointing out the truth, that there is greater variance. The curve for men is flatter. By having this curve be flatter than it is for women, there is much more variance. Much more variance means that you're going to have many more individuals at the extremes than women, see? Because women will tend to cluster around here, the average. That's where they will cluster, the majority of them. But here at the extremes, there will be more men than women in everything. And also on the opposite side, and we know this, for instance, everybody knows that there are more autistic boys than there are autistic girls. And this is non-controversial. People wonder about it. Why is it that there are more autistic boys? Why are there more autistic boys than girls? Well, it's because of variance. And male variance, as I said before, this has been pointed out since the time of Darwin. Darwin was one of the first to notice that there was huge variation among males, but relatively little among females in dimorphic species. In dimorphic species like human beings. And so this is what's going on. It's not a big conspiracy. We're not sitting around at the patriarchy deciding that we're going to screw over women. It's not that women aren't able to, it's that there are relatively few women who are able to. And you have to remember, when you get to the top of the corporate ladder, when you get to the top and win the Nobel Prize, in order to get there, you have to be exceedingly smart and exceedingly driven. You have to have a whole host of qualities that are relatively hard to come by, a combination of such qualities that are hard to come by. For instance, I always think of Disney Corporation. The Disney Corporation has hundreds of thousands of employees at all the Disney parks and the movies that they make and all the rest of it. And yet there's one guy at the top, Robert Iger. How did he get there? By chance? No, because he probably has a whole bunch of characteristics that allowed him to get to the top. A whole host of characteristics that he, as a male, tends to have more of by virtue of variance. So, feminists want to equalize the boardroom. Feminists want to equalize the cabinet room. For instance, Justin Trudeau, Canada's favorite feminist. You know, he said that half of his cabinet were going to be women. But the thing is, the women that he put there, are they any good? Probably not. Yeah. Probably there were a lot of better men better qualified in all departments. But he put women just to prove a political point. But you see, it has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with biology. And this is the problem with feminism, and going back to the original purpose of this video. See, feminists need this myth of a glass ceiling because they cannot stomach a biological determinism to outcome. They want all the outcomes to be equal. They want everybody to be the same. They want people to be, they want equality of outcome. They want equality of outcome, and they are willing and able, in many cases now, as you see with Justin Trudeau, and you're seeing it around the Western democracies, they are able to gerrymander the situation so as to produce equal outcomes. But these equal outcomes are bad for our society. They are bad because many times these women are simply not up for the job. And it has to do with this, with variance. There are fewer women who can carry a 200-pound weight on their backs compared to men. And this is a statistical fact. This is a biological reality, and yet we insist on putting women as firefighters who are unable to carry a 200-pound pack on their backs. Of course, the 200-pound pack is the equivalent of the weight of a human being that firefighter is supposed to save from a burning building. Now, if we as a society put a woman who is incapable of doing it, not through any fault of her own and not through any big conspiracy, but simply because she is physically unable to, because that is the biology of it, and we allow her to be in such a position, and she is unable to save somebody, and that thereby causing the death of that person and possibly the death of herself, because I am sure that these female firefighters want to do the best job possible, and I'm sure that being unable to carry a 200-pound person out of a burning building, they will stay and fight and do whatever is necessary until they themselves succumb to the fire. Now, that would be a double tragedy. It's not just one person who died, but two. And why are we doing this? To prove a political point? That's the problem with feminism. Feminism has myths. It cannot accept reality. Now, this is one reality. I've done a couple of other posts about other realities, other myths that feminists spew out, refusing to accept the reality of what's really going on. Well, this is a pernicious one. There is no glass ceiling. It's a myth, and it's an explainable myth. I didn't like this video today. I was so serious, forceful and serious, and not light and cheerful. I'm not saying that I have to be like a bimbo, but I should make it a little bit lighter. I'm gonna try more in the next one. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button, and if you enjoyed the other videos on this channel, please subscribe. Thank you so much.